And what's good is Out on a Limb, hosted by me, Adam Michalesko. Today, I have literally one of my favorite people in the building. Well, I guess over Zoom or Ring Central. Anyway, Laura Okmin. So you'll see her on NFL as an NFL reporter, currently with Fox. You'll see on the sidelines. If you go to a game, you will see her for sure. She's the founder of LO Productions. She's a children's book author. She is also the founder of Okmin Entertainment, and most importantly, Galvanize. Laura, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I hope that if they see me on the sideline, you're also with me on the sideline.
I'll be with you for sure on the sidelines this year again. That was, I guess, before we start, I always do a song of the day, but before we start, I'll say where we met first. It was. Do you remember the game? I know it was that Phillies and Eagles game. I forget the team we were playing or they were playing, but all I remember.
Yeah, be in there. I got you.
Yeah. All I remember is I was with you and like literally right away. I don't know if you felt it too, but like there was like a connection right away. Like we just hit it off, bouncing back and forth, like just the energy, and it was the coolest feeling. Because I don't think someone ever matched that energy I ever got. So like it was so cool.
It's so much fun because sometimes depends on the game. Sometimes, and I think our game kind of did that. There were lulls where you and I could kind of hang and talk, and then there was like that like excitement where we couldn't. So
right.
Sometimes I won't remember what game we're at, but I will remember the entire conversation that you and I had as we were on the field and enjoyed meeting each other. But
right.
I know I told you this, but it was such a pleasure sharing the field with you. You were not only so wonderful at what you did and helped me a ton, but you were so exceptional at who you are and just such a light. So I so enjoyed my time with you and thrilled to continue it here on the podcast.
Oh, that was as soon as we had that conversation, just hanging out. I was like, I gotta get her on. I was like, there's so much here, like you, even like we're talking about stuff at halftime, figuring out like what you should even wear the hat wise. I don't know if you remember that through Twitter. That was funny. Everyone loved you after that with the hat you wore. I forget even what hat it was, but it was really cool. And then even talking about baseball and everything, and then the journey with trying to be on TV and everything. So it was really cool to just bounce that off someone who's seasoned, who's a veteran in this business. I think it's the coolest thing.
I love when we get people on the field because everybody's like, "Oh, I want to be a sideline reporter," and I do too, right? Like I've been doing it a long time. I love it, but there's so much to it that people don't see. What they see is there might be a game that we don't get a lot of action on the field because there's so much going on during the game. And somebody at home might be like, well, you were on TV 3 times or 4 times. Like, what a boring game. And it's like, woo, we do a lot on the field that doesn't necessarily get onto television. And so I love for you young men and women to be able to see that and see that there's so much more than 15 seconds on camera, but the way that we're helping the guys in the booth, the way that we're helping all the guys and the gals in the truck, the way that we are also communicating with the teams, going back and forth. And there's so much going on. There's like, the game you're watching, there's the game on both sidelines. There's the game in your ear, what the guys are saying. There's the game on the truck. There's so much happening. And
right.
So I love that you got to kind of, that you do that. I know you've done it a whole lot more than just for me, but I love that you get to be down there to see not just cool. I want to be on camera. I want to do this, but I really want to be a part of this entire team right now. So I love that you got to see that.
Yeah. I mean, and one thing I've noticed, especially with you, is how, like, I know we're not going to hit on football. I don't want to hit on football as much, but I love how even the relationships you create, like that's one thing I've definitely learned from Penn State is like, the relationships you create, with the athletes or just people in general, like how many people came up to you and were like, hey, how you doing? Like I can't, like, I know personally, like when I'm out somewhere and whatnot, and, people always come reaching out, like, saying how are you, Adam, and whatnot, like pick me out from a crowd. I know in the bottom of my heart, like I know that it means that I set an impression on them, the personality, and that you made yourself available that they can come up to you again. So the fact that it happens to you all the time, especially with like big names and whatnot, I think it's the coolest thing in the world.
It's the greatest compliment, right? No matter who it is, exactly what you said. When someone remembers you and they might not remember your name, they might not remember the game you're at, but it's just like, oh, that person makes me feel good. And I think I learned that really young. I learned it early on. I learned it when I was young when I felt like I didn't really belong, and everybody, 30 years ago was saying nobody cares what you're saying, you're a girl in sports and nobody cares. And there was so much negativity, and you start thinking that, that you start
Mhm.
thinking maybe I don't. And so I was trying so hard all the time. I was proving myself all the time. I'm not just going to ask a player about how are you adjusting to the new 4-3 defense. I'm going to be like, let me explain to you the difference between a 3-4 and a 4-3. And the player's like, oh my God, are you going to ask a question? And so I realized all that time as a young woman forcing myself and pushing myself and proving myself, I wasn't making connections. I was just talking.
Yeah.
And the Maya Angelou quote that changed my life was, people won't remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel. And so that was always my goal, and still is to this day. You might not remember what we talk about, but I hope whenever I bop up or I bop in, that you're like, oh, let me go talk to Laura. She's going to make me think, or she's going to make me feel, and I'm into it. And so
Right.
that's all we can do, right? It's there's a life change at an age when you stop trying to prove, and you just find your sweet spot of like, this is
Mhm.
who I am. And it just turns into the most authentic, real conversations because you're not trying anymore. And that was
And there's
hard.
no
And I know that's not gender. I know guys do that too.
right, and there's no need to try. I feel like there's a consensus out in the world where you need to impress and whatnot, but being yourself that's the easiest way to impress. I've learned that. I think I would say junior at Penn State, like, and then just ran with it.
I mean, for you to get that at that age is magic. Honest to God, I didn't learn it till I was 40. Like
Wow.
I just look at my life as first act, second act. First act, was just, young me to get to 40, and I had so much work to do, and I was hiding so much, wasn't sharing. And then breakdown, breakthrough after 40 was when I had to figure out who I was, not my job, but who I was. Because I checked a ton of cool boxes, but I was very like linear. I want to do this, check, check. And then suddenly had a ton of check boxes, but also was very sad and very lonely. And well, what else is there? And then my work began, and it was all about who am I? So for you to be able to say, I learned that in college, will save you a lot of money in therapy, and it will save you a lot of time, and it'll probably put you on your path a lot quicker than I was, that you're not going to be so focused, hopefully, on
Hmm.
what do I want to do next? What do I want to do after that? What do I want to do after that? I think you've mastered the where my feet are, like what am I doing
Right.
right now? And if you can stay here, it's going to get you there. But there's never a there, because there it's like, it's just the ever moving goalpost, right? Like, it's just like,
Hmm.
well, I'm there, but no, I'm not, because now I want to go there and there. So all there is here. And if you can
Right.
find that and be where your feet are and really take advantage of it, everything else sort of takes care of itself.
I love that you said that because especially with what I'm doing now with baseball. Well, I took this season off to continue to train and giving it my one last big go around with the MLB and whatnot, and then continuing doing this stuff. Oh, reconnecting. There we go. No, we're good.
Yeah.
That's okay. Um, you can, yeah, we're good. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. But like training with like the MLB, like going my last big go around with that, and then trying to be on TV and all this stuff. Like it's scary. Like it's like you hit those high and low points, and stuff gets scary sometimes. Like I had you get low points. Like I got one recently, but like it's just the point to stay grounded and just understand. And I chose this path. I want to do something different and live this. See if it works out. Like this is the life I want to live.
Um, I live for low points, and I hate to say that, I'm not manifesting, but I just look very much at, in the old days, you win or you lose, and I'm just one of those that firmly believes you win or you learn. And so
Yes.
I know that if I put down all my life defining moments that led me to, this moment, which is my favorite moment in the world, it wouldn't be my happy moments. I wouldn't list a single high. It would be all my low moments, because they led me to this moment. You're
Hmm.
so busy enjoying good stuff, which we should be. We don't get enough of it. So like, freaking wrap your arms around it, embrace it. But I think for so long I would hit a low point and I would try to hide from it, or I would run from it, or I would ignore it. And it just, I know when I get something that I didn't expect or something hard, then I'm like, all right, what am I supposed to learn from this? And then where I'm at in life, you should just be the what should I learn from this? I'm the what should I learn from it? How should I teach from it? And
Right.
so live for those moments because I know that that's how I can inspire versus if we sat here and talked about all good stuff, it would be a really boring conversation, to be honest.
Eh, you're right, and I love that quote. It's actually on my vision board. I never lose, I win or learn. That's I think it's from Muhammad Ali. I want to say I forget who it is from, but I
That's
love that quote.
like if it wasn't him, like but I think it's one of those that I'm sure he has said it, but so many every person that you and I look up to doesn't just say that, they live that. It's really easy
Right.
to say it, but then all of a sudden you get hit with something bad and like to me it's always first step feel it, second step examine it, third step teach from it, right? But
Yes.
so in a hurry to get to two or three.
It's all about the point of just to relax, get the mindset. No matter how positive or negative something is, how fast you can get to neutral, and live from those moments and stay present. In that moment.
My husband always says this, and he is the most zen person I know that like doesn't say it, he really lives it. So like he's my inspiration with it. But he'll always say to me, the universe doesn't know if it's good or it's bad. It happened to you. We put it's good or it's bad or what our feeling to it. But he always takes it from such a different perspective of this is what happened to you. What do you want it now attached to it? And
I love it.
right? So it makes you really like again, kind of go a few, take it around the block a few times of, okay, before I make this bad or I make this good, let me kind of sit with it for a second. So I'm
I'm
sort of like examining it though. But he lives that and it's
I'm
a life change.
It is, and I got to talk to your husband about this stuff. I'm all about that stuff. I love listening or talking about that stuff. um,
I will switch with him. You will enjoy the conversation.
so I always do this right in the beginning, but we've got a good conversation. So song of the day, and like I said, happy belated birthday. I wanted to put that on the podcast as well. I know it's recent, but song of the day. What song are you vibing to recently?
So there's so many songs I'm vibing to right now. Like I'm in just I'm very much in a girl power. Like I'm all for like I'm a big country music fan and women are finding their voices literally and figuratively. So like I'm really enjoying young women stepping into their voice and into their platform. But my song that's just a day that I need it, and probably needed it after a birthday, after you get, to this age, is the song Living by Dirk Bentley. And my husband, when I turned 50, was like, can I throw you a party? And I was like, no, I don't really know how I feel about 50. I don't know if I'm like running to it or, like kind of slowly going into it or how I feel about it. So I said, I don't really think I want to celebrate. And he said, well, can I frame it differently? Can I ask you if I can throw you a party where people you love can spend the night showing you how much they love you? And that sounded very different to me than a party. And I was like, yeah, like that's perfect for this age to feel that. And
Right.
so I picked a theme song because everyone should have one for their birthday. And at the time it was Dirk Bentley's Living, which hadn't come out like big yet. And it's just so good. And there's a line just about a heart full of grateful. And that's the one that resonates with me. It is just how ridiculous of me to not starting a new decade. My mom died at 50. So I know better than to say, ugh, I don't want to be this age. How fortunate am I to outlive my mom and to be alive and to be able to celebrate this age? So that song sort of
Yes.
encapsulates all of that for me.
I love that. I love that. I think lyrics are a big part in songs, and I love how moments like that, bring you into such a good moment. I love that. Mine is I got in a random classic rock kick recently, but mine is "Goodbye Stranger" by Supertramp.
That's fantastic. I was worried when you were going to go old school. Like I was kind of like, here we go. It's going to be like from 2000, but you truly went old school,
Oh, of
which I
course.
love.
No, I'm not. I'm not one of these young kids who think that early 2000s is old. I'm not. No, we don't do that.
Thank you. Supertramp. I can go. The other day we were going out and into the big city of Nashville and like needed to like let's go, let's get up, and we just put on a whole mix of Earth, Wind and Fire and was just like so there's nothing like some old school funk, like just the
Yeah.
old, like truly old school stuff like that. That God, I love when like you young guys figure that out and like go back to those scores.
I love it. I love it. So, I want to try to hit on just a couple, quick things. Not quick, but I want to try to hit on a couple things outside of the sports world, but like also detailing how how you even got in the position you're in now. Like, I know you went to it was Kentucky. You went to, correct? Um, and then I'm thinking about like journalism and what got you into wanting to report and get into that type of life.
So I'm a Chicago girl, and I went to the University of Kansas, and the only reason why I have to jump
Kansas.
this is basketball, where I'm like, hey, hey, watch it. It's not Kentucky, it's Kansas. We're very sensitive to our basketball. But I was a Chicago girl, so sports wasn't gender. Like we all grew up going to Bears games, and you were either going to, Cubs games or White Sox and Blackhawks. And so I don't remember as a young girl being told sports was for boys. And so I knew journalism very young, young being, probably, late high school. But my mom would always call me her little storyteller, and she would put me to bed and would always tell people that I would try to tell Laura, or then I was called Lulu. So she would say I would try to read Lulu a story, but I would always stop her and go, let me tell you a story. And I would just talk and make up stories until I fell asleep. So from a very little age, I was told you tell stories. And my mom, like, really always said that to me. You're going to tell stories one day. And so I think somewhere, that sticks. And I took journalism classes at KU, and I took a sports journalism class later on, and I loved it. I was the only girl. And when I was like, oh, I think I like this, I was told really quickly, you can't do this. Like that's not the career for you. There's not women doing that. It's very hard. And so luckily, even though I had no confidence back then at all, I had none. When I was told you can't do it, there was a little kernel of it enough to say, you're going to do this. Like, let's go. And so it went from me wanting to tell stories. When I took that sports journalism class, I was like, well, these are the best stories to tell. What better stories are there than the sports world? So my
Right.
first job was Montgomery, Alabama, and I was doing news during the week and sports on the weekend, which was a big deal, 30 years ago. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I didn't love everything that came with it, how hard it was to be a woman and how much you had to be, told, no one wants you here all the time. But I loved it in terms of, I found real quickly, these are the stories I want to tell. And these are the people I want to, show who they are. And if you want to be a storyteller, there's no better venue than the world of sports.
I love it. I love it. And then, well, I mean, like you said, you being a Chicago girl, I know that obviously, like I said, it was so easy to look like whenever I have a guest on, I always like to look up stuff about them and whatnot, and things that maybe stick out to me. And but like you had a whole page on your website, and I was like, well, this is like where else, go straight to the source. But so like even like the Chicago Bulls championship run, like how special is that? Is that your Emmy from that behind you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I was young. It was my third job, and my first two jobs, I was, in Montgomery, Alabama, Chattanooga, 1 year, and then I got to Chicago. And for a Chicago girl, that was awfully cool, to be doing this, to be on the Bulls run. And by the way, I just covered Michael playing baseball when I was in Chattanooga and he was in Birmingham. So I was already getting to meet him in a baseball and more of a humble role. And then when he went back to Chicago, I wound up getting a job there. So it was so exciting, and to be able to watch the Last Dance and be at all those games, and I to be sitting and watching the flu game on the court, and to be sitting and and seeing all these championships. And my best friend at the time was Stuart Scott, so I was sitting with Stuart for most of those games, and both of us Chicago kids, and watching these moments and having these moments. And I remember one time, Mike Stewart and I were sitting there, and we were watching one of the games. It wasn't the flu game, but it was one of the championships. I think it was against the Jazz. And we were watching a reporter who was getting angry because the game was going long. And now I understand it because they were frustrated because of time. But back then we were like, we're free basketball. Like there's more. It's like good. And I just remember like Stuart and I kind of quietly, saying to ourselves, let's never forget that these are our moments too. Let's make sure that even though we're watching the Bulls moment or Michael's moment or Scotty's moment, we're having moments. And so I'm really fortunate, the gift of time to look back and go, not only was I part of history and watching those cool games and interviewing them and being part of that, but that was quality time with Stuart, and I wouldn't get enough of that since he passed so young. So I'm very aware of not just what I was watching, but who I was watching it with and how I was growing. I had no confidence. I wasn't ready to cover that. I wasn't very good. Like I look back at that time and go, God, I was not ready for that at all. But I'm so blessed that I was there for it.
Well, and I love that, and I know that you have a dog, Booyah, the obviously famous catchphrase. So, how old is Booyah then?
Booyah, it's 4. I'm waiting as soon as I say if he runs in here. He is 4 years old. And it's Adam, there's so much joy anytime we're at like a dog park or anything where Booyah's kind of off. And all of a sudden we'll know where he is because somebody has like seen him run over somewhere and they look down and they'll yell, Booyah. And so we always say like there's never been a name that evokes so much joy, when people
Yeah.
say it.
Well, like I mean, he came up with the a perfect catchphrase, and I feel like that's something, especially in this type of business, to come to catch something that everyone loves, like that's incredibly hard to do. So I mean, the fact that he did that is amazing.
And the other side of the pillow, like he didn't just. I wish I could turn the camera, but I can't. But I've got like the most beautiful picture, like a huge frame of him right here. You can feel him right here. But yeah, I mean, he changed our industry forever. It's and
Hmm.
when I met him, he was just starting. He was ESPN two, and so he hadn't like really skyrocketed yet. And I remember us being in situations where I was the only woman and he was the only black man or black person. And I remember the difference of me kind of hiding in a corner and not wanting to be noticed, and Stuart walking in and like, I'm here. And and him not understanding me of like, why don't you stand out? Like you already do. You're the only woman. Step into it. And I was always like, but I don't want to be. And he was the opposite. So watching him through that journey of being told you're too ethnic, you're too urban, tone it down, and watching him, can I give a middle finger? I won't do it, but watching him give a middle finger to everybody and, and saying that I'm going to be myself. That's not a big deal right now because authenticity and, vulnerability are such buzzwords, but back then 35 years ago that was a huge deal, or 31 years ago him just being himself was a big deal while everyone was telling him not to be. So yeah, like that's a trailblazer.
See, I love that, and I love the idea of just going with it, believing in yourself. I mean, especially for you at a young age, how many? I mean, like you said earlier, with low points, you love low points, not bring it to the universe or anything, but
I prefer not to have one right now. I
but
understand that. Yeah.
but I mean, like I'm 24 right now, and like I've had, you get those low points, especially with everything, and that stuff's scary. Like, so you at even 24 and going on, like, did you ever just kind of sit down and just be like, there'll be high, sunshine, there'll be something good coming out of this. I believe in it.
You're so wise beyond your years. Like I don't worry about you because I think your heart is an optimistic, hopeful heart. Like I mean I learned that about the feel. Um, but I was so sad at your age, like my mom had just died and I was starting a career when everyone told me they didn't want me in it. And my mom wasn't there to tell me it was okay. And I didn't have that voice yet to tell me it was going to be okay. So I think I didn't have like now you and I share optimistic, hopeful hearts, but mine then was very sad. And I think I got so caught up in the trailblazing and the like, I've got to do this. I want to do this. I want to prove everybody wrong. But I didn't enjoy myself. I didn't make friends. I didn't make connections because that would have been showing them that I was lonely and that I was sad and that there was more to it. I went along with the whole ruse of Yeah, my job's great, so I'm happy because everyone was always telling me, you're living the life. And I was, I had a great job and met really cool people, but I also was very lonely and very sad. And so I didn't learn how to cope with any of that until I was 40, honest to God. Like I just
Wow.
stuck down. So I don't think I even talked about or thought about low lights or low moments and high moments back then because it was at work, it was a high, but then I was just so sleepwalking in life. So it wasn't high or low, it was just work or nothing. And I can't explain that except to say that I was sleepwalking for a really long time, but I had a cool job. So the fact that you're examining your ups and your downs and looking at what do I take from them, you're light years away from that I was and from I think most 24-year olds.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that. I feel I definitely think there's, it's hard, especially like, when you're trying to, make the money and do all the things, make sure you pay the bills and all that good stuff. But it's, it's sometimes like I have a very good support friend group. I cut out all the negative people out of my life and created. Have you ever heard of the show Entourage?
Of course.
I love that. That's like my favorite show of all time. And but I was like, who is in my entourage? And so after I kicked out all the negative people out of my life, I found this good core group of people who, they want as bad. They want me to succeed as bad as I want them to succeed, and we always bounce back off each other. Like I talk to two of my friends every single day, and I have a couple more, but they're, those core people. It's like it's the best thing because even like before I talked to you, I was on a phone with my friend just talking about life.
I can't stress this enough. I'm just such a believer in there's different people for different seasons. And when you're young,
Mhm.
it feels like you need to keep those friends forever, and you just don't. And it doesn't have to be dramatic, and it doesn't have to be sad breakups. It's just you change, and the people around you should change. There's always exceptions, and some people will stay
Exactly.
for a long time, and some won't, and some shouldn't. But I know my husband and I, Mike and I, were just talking about this because we met late in life. So we met at 40. And so we had no friends in common. And we kind of have, had his friends and my friends and then started building a life together the last 10 years. And what I would tell you is all of a sudden we looked around and we were like, look at how all of our friends are killer couples and that they're into each other. And like, I'm obsessed with my husband. Like I love my husband and I hope he would say the same thing. I know he would. Like
He will.
have children, and so the relationship is the baby. So we treat it like that. And we didn't intentionally get together and go, well, let's find other couples that feel this way. Because back then I didn't have friends like that. Neither did he. We had friends who kind of weren't into their spouse. Kind of like, like would, rip them or like, my marriage. And I just didn't know better. And then all of a sudden we have this like incredible relationship and we started realizing that all the couples around us are like that too. They love each other and they like each other. And again, wasn't intentional, but it's just kind of what you're looking for in life. You start attracting that and they're attracted to you. So if you're hanging around with a bunch of people who don't share your heart or share your focus or share your goals and all that, it's just that to me, you're going to be stunted in that. Your
Mhm.
circle should change as you do.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, the next step in that is to find like a nice girlfriend on top of that. But we find relationships as we go along.
You're 24. Take
I
your
know,
time. Enjoy
but
your life.
it's crazy. Everyone's getting engaged around me. It's the weirdest thing. I'm like, we're 24.
Don't feel that pressure or that pull. I'm like, I can't stress this enough. But it's so hard to grow on your own, and to do it with another person is hard. My husband and I'll always say to him, going, do you wish that we met younger? And he always says the same thing. It'll always be like we weren't ready for each other 1 minute sooner. And we weren't. Like we had to do so much work to find each other. So I'm not saying if you don't find an incredible woman at 25, maybe that's it and that's meant to be. Or let the
Fingers
universe.
crossed.
Oh no! Or let the universe take care of itself. And in a million years, I didn't know. I did not know this is the direction of the podcast. It makes me love it even more.
I told you I knew, like, this is why I stopped doing questions. Like, I was on it. Someone was documenting me being professional in baseball, playing an independent season, wanted to grow. And me and this guy stood really close. He's from Seattle, but he told me about the whole podcast. Like, he literally had nothing written down. He just had a natural flow conversation. So, and that's what I learned from that. I was like, I love, like, I never expected this conversation to go like this either. I didn't know what to expect, but I love it.
My goal is when I do preparation, and I'm a preparation freak, like most of us in this industry. And so if I'm doing an interview, I will spend hours and hours researching, and then I will write dozens and dozens and dozens of questions. Like just I'll stay up for hours, right? Of just questions I love, questions I love. My goal is to ask the first one, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because you hope that first one is a good one that gets you to a place where you didn't Google because they haven't said it before. And then you're like, oh, tell me about the love of your life at 40 years old. I didn't see that in my research. But it's always my goal is ask the first one and that's it. And then shut your notebook down and go. But the fact that you do all that research, if all of a sudden I drop something to you and say all of a sudden, like I wrote a kid's book, a long time ago, and then you're able to just be like, well, it was about your mom dying of cancer. How old were so it's the callback that you're aware of kind of
Yep.
a little bit of the backdrop, but you're not so glued into the questions. That's where the
Well,
magic is.
Well, I love that because I mean I have that obviously as a hitting point to talk about that, but I think I love that because that's why I do that song of the day question, and then I always talk about where we met because it always goes off of that, and that's what I love the turning around, and it's the coolest moment because I'm sure you had many guests, even for athletes or whoever who you're very dry with conversations. Like you ask them one question, they're like yeah, and you're like well how could I break that in, and then you figure out the one thing that gets them like the triggers and then they just flow.
100%. And usually my trick with quiet ones at first, get them talking about someone else.
Yeah.
Usually like gets it going, and then you can kind of turn it a little bit, get the left turn. But it's it's you said I can swear. I asked you, so I'm gonna swear once.
Yeah, you
But
could.
two things for COVID. I gave up small talk and I gave up assholes. And I just had no time for either. And so the small talk one was really serious. We don't have enough time in the day. The phones in our hands make sure of that now. Like there's just you're
Hmm.
always working, you're always, looking ahead, whatever. And it really made me go, I don't have enough time and I don't want to spend it talking about nothing. And so
Hmm.
it doesn't mean I've cut certain people out who maybe I've had friends that we didn't go deep, and then it's given me an excuse to go deep with them because now I'm like, sorry,
Hmm.
I gave up small talk. Like I'm just starting right here, and let's go. And I
I
do
love
that on
it.
airplanes or interviews. Like it doesn't matter. Who has time to just talk about nothing these days? And in this like beautiful stage of vulnerability, it just feels like people are a little bit more open to going deeper now too.
Yeah. And I love that. You have to meet my cousin Becky. You guys would click like that. She's into yoga and everything. She even love your husband, I'm sure. But like, her, with her life, like you guys would just click. Like I see Becky in you. It's the funniest thing.
I love it. I'm in. I'm in. Any
Yeah.
good woman, I'm in.
Yeah, she's the best. But so I obviously I want to hit on some quick things. Like you covered the Olympics, and you know, I think, and then obviously we mentioned basketball, and I want to hit galvanize as like one big topic, but like just these like other like NBA and NHL, like all these small or all these like not small but like these victories, like getting in the sports, and then football is the main thing. Like you know, when did these things hit? Like, did they just pop up, or was it just planned that you were like, I'm gonna get every one of these?
Um, I think when I was younger, it was more no, it was always the preparation led you there. And
Hmm.
it's why when young reporters say I want to cover this, I'm like, you got to cover everything. I'm really, really grateful that I've covered every sport. When I went from Chicago to Montgomery, Alabama, I'd never watched NASCAR. And I really didn't know the SEC. I went to Kansas, like I could talk hoops. And it really made me so much better as a journalist, a sports journalist, to be able to go to a NASCAR race, to be able to go to an SEC football game or a high school football game on Friday, or go to a minor league game, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and then all of a sudden slide into the NFL, and doing that all in a year, doing all that. So, and especially with the Olympics, by the time I got to host my first Olympics, it was really great because I wasn't nervous, like, "Ooh, what do I know about all of these sports?" I was ready to dive in and get to know all these. Like, no, I haven't snowboarded before, but I'm going to figure it out quickly enough to be able to ask good questions and, know what I'm looking at. So, really, it was just preparation led me to all these great opportunities. And then once I started really focusing on football, it was when Fox Sports hired me and they brought me out to LA, and I was hosting an NFL daily show and doing features for Fox Sports that were football. But they asked me then, "Do you really know football?" Because I was kind of more basketball. And so now I always laugh because people are like, "What else do you know?" I'm like, "I've covered everything, but
Everything.
everything." But it's really nice at this age to make one sport your life, because then you're able to build deeper relationships. I'm able to stay in contact with everybody and really become an expert at something, because it was hard when I was bopping all over the place. Now I get to settle in and really get to know a landscape.
Right. I mean, and then I mean, now you're like you said, developing relationships. I mean, you literally can type up your name on on YouTube, and you've had conversations with Aaron Rodgers and just all these big name athletes. Like, I'm sure those connections are very special to you.
Everything. I mean, they really are. It's just I never take connections lightly. And so I am really fortunate that, that when I walk onto a field, that I'm not going and saying, I'm not hunting people down or chasing people down, which it feels like when you're young. You get to a point, you all kind of grow together. And so, that you hope that they look forward to seeing you. You hope that, or I hope that I've built relationships that they don't think that I need everything, when I see them, that sometimes I'm not asking for anything. I try very hard. If I'm seeing Aaron Rodgers, I know that last time I saw him, I asked, "Hey, can I talk to you pregame?" So the next game, I'm not going to do that to him. I'm going to be careful of that. So I'm very mindful of what a gift it is to have these relationships, but I'm also very mindful of treating them right and making sure that that there's a little bit of give and get each, both ways, and not taking advantage of them. I had to learn
Yes.
that as a young reporter, but that's one of the most important lessons I learned.
Oh, I'm sure. Before we kind of branch out of the sports stage, is there any like specific, maybe athlete or just someone in the business that kind of like just the talking, that really impacted you, that like you like talking to them all the time because like they're your person? I mean, that's probably a loaded question because I'm sure everyone was really great.
Everyone, like, I mean, man, like football wise, like Brian Urlacher, it took me years to get in with him. And once I did, he's one of my favorite people. And probably also because it took me a long time to get into that bubble of his, is what he calls it. I can't get enough conversations nowadays with Aaron Donald and Odell. Like those two, they'll be, there's no small talk, that's meaningful talk. And I love that. Same with Aaron. Aaron Rodgers was like that too. There's gonna, how are you as a question. You're gonna actually catch up and
Mhm.
hear how they are. And also what's really cool for me is I get to know these guys as young guys coming in, and then I get to see them as husbands and fathers, and I'm watching them grow. And then the men my age who I knew as scouts or who I knew as assistant coaches or GAs suddenly are coordinators and head coaches. And so there's all this growth when you've done it, I'm 30 years now. So it's really, really cool to see that. But I will tell you that, my favorite conversations from, many moons ago were the lessons I learned. Most players were the ones who taught me, about relationship building. The first time, I might have told you this on the field, but I just remember one time calling Charles Barkley when I was young, and Charles answered the phone and he said, "Well, or Okmin, what do you need?" And I was like, "Oh, can a girl just call and say hello?" And he's like, "A girl can. You just never do." He's like, "You call me, you see something. Like, what do you need?" And that devastated me because I looks at the phone and it's like, Laura, what does she want? And so in my young head, what I thought was, why else would I call him? I don't want to bother him. I'm not going to be like, good game, or like, how was your weekend? And and I don't want him to get the wrong impression. So I thought all these things of why not to reach out. And so I just did it unless I needed something. But that changed my life because I didn't want to be that girl. And so I started
Yeah.
trying to figure out, how do I reach out when I don't need anything? And that was really important. And when I was covering Michael Jordan, I remember one time kind of stalking and waiting for him. He was parking in the United Center, and the walk to get to the locker room is, 4-minute walk, probably 3 minutes with a stride. And I was waiting because I had to ask him something, and he came across, around the corner, and I jumped him and was like, Michael, and he just kind of like did that. And I was like, what? And he said, hi, Laura, how are you? And I was like, hi, like, I'm good. I have to ask. And he kind of did that again. And he's like, I know you have 3 minutes. I know you need, time with me is short, but you can also say hello. And so that was really important. So now, even in a post game interview, if I'm, if all of a sudden if it's a walk off and I've got to run to a guy really quickly and it's Dak Prescott and he's running up and I know they're coming, the camera's coming, I still will say, hold on to my producer and go, great game. Thank you so much for doing this. I have to make a person to person connection before I slide into the reporter. And I don't know if I would have done that if Michael didn't teach that to me.
I love that you said that. One of the life lessons early on I learned is when I was working a game. I forget if it was with Fox. I think it was with Fox, but the audio guy, his name was Rick. I think it was with Fox. I'm not sure, but he, it's like also appreciating the people behind the scenes as well, like because reporters don't do that. They kind of just take people for granted. They hook them up and whatnot, or mic them up, and then that's it. Like they don't care. And so but I noticed, after that, when I was working with you, I noticed how you take the time to, appreciate everyone, because everyone's like, it's cool when you really think about it. It's one big happy family, like it's so cool, and it's going to grow and continue. So like, why not have these people as your family? Like, why not just surround yourself and grow on a dirt? See, exactly.
What
I,
else?
it's such an easy concept, but people take that for granted. Maybe a celebrity status, you become a diva, or just a jerk, and it's just not cool. And I never understood that. So like, that's why I like the fact that I've worked behind the scenes first and then try to work my way up, because you learn that stuff.
You'll never forget that when you're older and you're doing that. It's hard to train someone the other way, if they don't treat people well and all of a sudden making them see the importance of that. But if you see that at a young age, you will 100% always take that with you.
Well, and that's what I do with anybody. Like my motto, especially with this podcast, but just in life, it's you show me respect, I show you respect. I don't care who you are, what you look like. If you're cool with me, I'm cool with you, and that's how it should always be.
If we could just bottle that up and just like champagne pour that all over the world, we'd be
If we could do that, that would be beautiful.
yeah, and it's really, I mean, especially in our world, in the sports world, like, that we're blessed. We're all so fortunate to be doing this. And the really cool thing is you get to a point where, when you are covering these guys and gals at that level and you're with them all the time, it's so nice because usually there is such a wonderful mutual respect if you're doing it right. And there's no bigger compliment when a coach or a player or a GM or an owner is happy to see you. And there really is no better compliment. So the bar is so low. I mean this, like, if you'd say it's hard to get, what I would say is it's hard to get into this business. It's harder to stay in this business. And so the secret to that, honest to God, it's be prepared. It's work your butt off and treat people well. And that's so lame that that's the bar. Because
Yeah,
that should be the given, right? Like that should be the pay the
it
entrance.
should how you grew. It should be how you grew up. It should be just taught to you naturally.
But we make
People
it
are.
hard.
Yeah, people. I feel, especially in today's world, feel entitled, like they deserve it, and I'm like, why? Like, what did you do? What hard work did you put in for that yet?
100%. So
It's,
that's always, it's great things for you to see at, at your age of just when you're shadowing or when you're with people, that are older and, in the positions that you want. It's just, I hope it's more than just, and you're like this, not everybody is, but
mhm.
not just what do they do, they're really good at it, but how do they treat people? Like who respects them? How do they respect people? All of that stuff is what I want you guys to see. What galvanized when so many of the women talk about, I always ask why. And if it's just she does good interviews or she's good at what she does, I'm like, Find out how she's respected, find out her work ethic, find out how she treats people. Like that stuff is important for you all to see that.
Right. And that's what that's what I kind of wanted to hit on. Just the last couple of things, obviously. So like, what impresses me about you is the fact that you have this the job world that you live in, but because I always say like I want to branch out. That's why I have this brand, and that's why I always say 5 to 7 sources of income and start off stuff. And as it's growing, that's where it's scary right now. But I love the fact that you became a children's author. You did that, and then you started the LO Productions, and then you have a company with your husband, and most importantly, Galvanize. Like I love the fact that you've done that so well. I mean, if we want to hit on just the little things quick, like how did you think about this stuff? Just run with it. Oh,
Oh, can you hear me?
there we go. Yeah, sorry. My Wi-Fi's been acting up today.
I'm one of those people that I don't mourn a dream dying. I love that. Like I love when my dreams change. I love when my dreams shift. So my goals when I was younger, were to be a reporter, be a network reporter, to work for the NFL on Fox, like all those awesome things. But then you start evolving from that. So okay, I have the job, but like I said, I was checking off all the boxes and I was really depressed. So I finally learned that's not what's making me happy. So what does make me happy? And for me, I've changed so much, and so my dreams should change with me, and my goals
Mm.
should change with me. So if I look at before 40, my accomplishments were all very personal accomplishments, and that was important, for me to build my foundation and my
Right.
career. But as I started realizing that that wasn't enough, it went from, well, I have a passion, but I don't have a purpose. What's my purpose? And that led me to helping other people and to wanting to make the business better and kinder than it was to me, and helping athletes in a different way. Suddenly it wasn't about me getting an interview. It was, how can I help you use the platform? And how can I show it in different ways and show who you are? And so I think I just feel like with younger people, you guys hold on to your dreams so hard and feel like if that's not a dream anymore, you failed. And I can't stress this enough. Like when somebody's dream changes, I can't congratulate them quickly enough. That means that you're growing. That means that you're evolving and other new things are lighting you up. So if you look at my path, it was very much linear and then it kind of started going like that. And what I would say is, even if they all do it, if it goes this way, it all touches. If you start seeing what my pattern was and how each thing I've done, you'll see how I've evolved. So my dreams and my accomplishments should evolve with it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I respect that because what I like what you said, about that all that stuff, because I like to relate stuff back to me, and then you figure that's why I feel like we have such a good connection. But when the idea with baseball and all these other things that I want to pursue is at the end of the day, like I always say, like John Cena was my role model growing up, like he's my guy. And like but he actually randomly follows me on Twitter, so if he ever sees this, shout out to him. But I love the fact that like I want to become like that, The Rock or the John Cena, like that type of name. Not much so. I mean, the money's great. Don't get me wrong, but not much so for that. But to always give back. I always had the idea of giving back and starting charities and foundations. I just love the idea of helping. So I love the fact that what you've done. Helping from children to then production and creating companies. I think that's the coolest thing that you did. And that's why I really respect.
Thank you. One of the things that I do that I love so much is I coach communications. And I have to think of a better word for it because I hate saying communications coach, but I have clients who are NFL head coaches, who are Super Bowl coaches, who are Olympians. And what's really nice when I look at my life and my circle of life, it took me a long time to find my voice. And so it took a long time, but the amount of time it was supposed to. And once I figured out and did the work on my voice and found out how to use it, suddenly this really cool shift happened where I started helping other people find theirs and how to use theirs. I couldn't have done that when I was 30 or 35 or 40 because I didn't even know how to use mine. So I could have never helped somebody, find theirs. And so again, I also wouldn't have wanted to do that because then it was more about me. Well, if I'm giving them the words to say, what about my credit? Like, but that's my words. And now I'm comfortable enough and confident enough and more altruistic to say it's not about getting credit. It's about whose life did I change? Whose life did I make better? Who did I help today? But I couldn't have done that earlier. And so I love that you're looking at the people you look at are the ones who have really big circles, right? Like it's just they just don't do one thing. There's not one box to check. They keep growing, but also remember to be patient with that because they grew into that, right? They found their
It's
niche,
hard.
they loved it, and then they went to the next one, and then they went to the next one. Be careful not to want to do six things at once. Do a couple things in your 20s, do it really well, and then and then you get to kind of keep branching out and grow from there, but don't impede that growing process.
Right, and I appreciate that advice. And then I know we got a couple more minutes here, but I wanted to hit on. I know galvanize is such a big thing, obviously for you, and I always see the reposts and everything. Like everyone, like this is like a big deal, and so when did you want to start, or when did you decide to start that? And two, like the growth. I mean, to get a lot of NFL teams involved. I think it's incredible.
Thank you. It's kind of what we're talking about. It's just at 40 when I just was like, what else is there? Like what else can I do? What else can I do besides checking boxes? And I really wanted to start helping. I really wanted a purpose to go along with my passion. And I just didn't have one, especially since I didn't have kids. And I started seeing all these young women get thrown into this business. And on one hand, I was like, awesome, because there weren't any, when I was in my 20s to see. But also, I started seeing them get thrown in so fast and so high. And I knew if I would have been thrown in like that, I would have never made it. I could have never, I wasn't ready. And so, luckily, when I started watching that, it was when I was older, because if I was in my 20s or 30s, I would have been really resentful of the young women. Like, well, they didn't do their work, or they don't belong, like get them out. But luckily, closer to 40 or 40, I got real protective and was like, this isn't right. How do I help? And so it literally went from just me going, how can I help? How can I help? And it took me about 5 months to find 20 women who wanted to be in a conference room. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but how can I help? And literally 5 months to find 20 women who were like, okay, we'll do it. And that was probably about 11, 12 years ago. And since then, it's been over 4,000 women, and it started women on camera. And now it's everybody, women in sports, from HR, PR, marketing, agents, coaches, it's broadcasting, on air, behind camera. And it's been incredible. And it's just everything I wish I would have had at, my 20s and my 30s. I wish I would have had an army of women to be supported by, and to help me along the way when I was making so many mistakes and I just didn't have any women to ask.
Well, I love how, because I feel like so I always believe in, everyone says that everyone followed this path and that's how became famous. But, but why not take that other path? Because that's your path, and you're going to create it. And so what you just essentially did, I feel like is the biggest, motivator and inspiration. Like you're the first of a first. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be like a Hall of Fame type of status, like your name's going to be up there. I mean, you just created this thing that grows. And so I guess the biggest question, this was actually the very first question before I jotted down just like little stuff, because I think it's the most important, because looking at your career and, it's obviously continuing. I mean, you're going to have a hell of a season this year, and obviously we'll be working with you, but do you ever just stop and be like, wow, what a career so far, and, what I'm going to accomplish, and just appreciate, like, do you ever just stop and like feel that?
Yeah, I do. And that took a really long time to get here, because I
Mhm.
was so focused on everybody else. And I
Yeah.
was so busy, like, why is she getting that? And why is he getting that? And why am I not getting that? And so I did that path for a long time. And one day I was still on that path. And honest to God, this was probably, I have to look back on Twitter, but it was probably like 4 years. maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, actually. But one day I was getting ready for a game Sunday morning, and my phone was blowing up, and I was like, "That's really weird." Like usually my friends and my husband would never like blow my phone up on a Sunday morning, and was like, "What's up?" And there was a tweet, and it was just congratulating me on being the third longest tenured sideline reporter in NFL history. And I didn't know anyone cared and kept track. Like I never thought about that before. Um, but my first thing was like my first thought was to tweet an age joke. And then all of a sudden it just hit me. And it was just like, how dare you? That, like, how dare you make fun of this? That it's a really big deal that I've been doing it a really long time. And so I went from wanting to like make an age joke to really, really wrapping my arms around it and going, God, did I waste a lot of time? Because I wasted on everybody else's path. And in the meantime, look at the path I was building. And I think that really kind of was the slap in the face that I needed to be much more grateful and to be much more present and to be much more, zen with my husband and look around and not make a joke about it, but to be like, it was really hard to get into this industry, and it's been to stay in it 30 years. It's been a challenge, and
Right.
I'm really proud to still be here because I didn't see women who were 50 plus years old.
Mhm.
I was told by the time you hit 30, you better have another career. Then I was told by the time you hit 40, you better have another career. And now, 50 plus, I love it galvanized that they don't just see a lot of women. I want them to see older women. I want them to see, diverse women and women who don't look like me, but I also need them to see older women because we've seen men age in this industry forever, but we haven't seen
Yep.
women do it. So I'm really proud to be one of the ones who's doing that.
I would say you're the pioneer of that, no?
No, because there's older and wiser and the ones, like there's still, but I mean, Pam Oliver, who's not much older than me, but a little, but older than me. And I look at Pam and just like, I mean, I'm the third longest tenured and Pam has me beat by like, is it 200 games? Like, I don't even know how many. Competitiveness, right? Like third longest. Well, who's ahead of me? Michelle Tafoya and Pam. And I'm like, well, can I catch up? And I'm like, no, like, and I shouldn't. Like, God love her for doing it as long as she has.
Yeah.
But there's been some women who've been doing it longer, but still in my generation. And so, like,
Right.
I can't. I love being with my girls with Galvanized, but I can't get enough of my Pams and my Lisa Salters and the women who've been doing it, longer or as long as me. And those are my favorite conversations to have. Because let me tell you something, Adam. Like, sexism is hard, but right when you think you beat it, ageism comes over and like punches you in the face. And so it was a whole nother battle. I was like, I didn't beat sexism. So there's a lot that women go through in this industry, and it's really cool now to have some women that are going through it together that we can lean on each other. But that's
I
a
love
different.
it. No, of course, and we can do another one if you ever wanted to. But Lisa, I've worked with her too. She's great. But this is my. I always ask this. I accidentally did this a while, like with my very first podcast, and then I have to listen to all of them because I always play them back and listen. I started a little playlist on YouTube because it's my advice playlist. So everybody I've had on ever always gives a piece of advice. So I always say, if what is your advice for just anyone in the world trying to succeed in their goals? Like my shirt is one of my brand shirts. It says no dreams, just goals. Like it's like and even in the industry, like for a girl trying to get up and into the sports world, like just anything in general. Like what is your best piece of advice you can give?
Um, it's probably, it goes back to be where your feet are. And it's as much as it's a great poster, it's just the truth of um there is nobody, who is ever going to say, let me say it this way. The last line in every book, the last line in every movie, or the last line in a TV show is, or in a, and just in a story is, and I won the Super Bowl, and I won an Emmy, and I won an Oscar. Like that's your last line. Everything that leads you there is the story, right? Like my husband produces movies, so I get to read all these scripts and all these stories, and the heart of every single story, if it's fiction or if it's real, is always what you go through. And so my biggest piece of advice is enjoy, enjoy, enjoy the good stuff because there's not enough of it in the world. So when you get a break, buy that break and enjoy it. But when the tough stuff comes for you, wrap your arms around it and really is what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I teach from this? And I think now everybody is so caught up in Instagrams and everybody else is living their best life when nobody it right now is really sure on what they're doing, at any age. So
Mhm.
I really, really, really can't stress this enough of just making sure that you're present, you're not looking ahead, you really are where your feet are, and you're making sure you're wrapping your arms around every single lesson that comes your way. And one day when you get to the ripe old age of 50 or 60 or 70 and you look back, all those things that you thought broke you and all those things that you thought changed your path, it's always the best stuff. It's always the stuff that led you to where you're supposed to be. And my idea of heaven is always that you get up there. And for me, it would be my mom who would be in a room with me and she would press play on an old school projector, how like the film, like,
Yep, yep.
and they show you a story of your life and you see how it was all fit, how it all fit, and how every single thing you did, the good stuff, mostly the bad stuff, it was all connected to get you to where you are. And so I try to live like that to make sure that everything that comes my way is part of my story and to make sure that I don't try to rush through any of the pain, rush through the lessons, and make sure that I'm really present and grateful for
That's a chef kiss right there. Everything happens for a reason. I mean, I love the fact that you hit on that. I think it's such an important piece, especially in Instagrams and social media. Is like that's why I don't like to be on that stuff. Everyone posts the big thing, but they don't realize it's say someone posted a picture they're surfing in Hawaii or something. That maybe they had trouble getting to that point. You know what I mean? Getting to that vacation. But they're not going to ever post that. They're going to just post that highlight. Like you have to stop and think about that type of stuff.
It's really true. And again, this was galvanized a couple years ago when during the pandemic, so we weren't doing anything in person, and there were over 400 applicants, and so I have to read every one of the essays, and they're very vulnerable. I always say if I read your essay, you won't get in, but if I feel your essay, you will. And so they have to be really honest about what they're going through, and that's the only way I let them in. And so it gets very competitive with vulnerability. And after, I'm reading 400 plus essays and I put them in groups, of like what people are going through because I pair. So I have to remember like who's going through what. And one of the words that caught me in my first essay was imposter syndrome. And, so trying to be someone you're not and trying to keep up with Instagram. And honest to God, over 400 essays, with the exception of two, every single woman talked about imposter syndrome. Every one of them. And so and then with Galvanize day 2, when we do 2-day boot camps, we bring the NFL rookies in or the professional athletes. The guys started talking about imposter syndrome virtually, and they still do in person this year. And there's things you guys get that I'm like, man, my generation would have killed for that. Like, how cool. This is not that one. This is the one that I fear for you guys. It breaks my heart that you get to compare yourselves to each other, that that you're thinking everyone else has it figured out and nobody does. So 400 plus essays, some of the girls or some of the women were the rock star ones, the ones that everybody thought they had it all together. They're posting all these incredible post about their job, about their life, but they were some of the ones that were feeling it the hardest. So I feel for you guys for social media because I don't think anyone ever gets off Instagram and feels better about themselves.
No, yeah, and well, that's exactly why I don't live that type of life. I don't need to. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's no point to me in bragging about something. Because like if you're not really true in that moment, what was the point in doing something like that? And I don't think people think that enough. Like it's about what makes you stand out. Not copying anyone. Why not create your own path? I think everyone feels the need to go down this certain path, like we just talked about, and why not veer off and do your own thing? Like you figure it out.
Where the magic is. I mean,
It's
it really
beautiful.
is. And those are the most fun conversations to have with people who, it's all of a sudden you're like, how in the world did you get here? And there's these fantastic stories, versus like,
Yeah.
how'd you get here? Well, A, B, C, and D, and it led me right here, which for me was that case, right? Like I went to journalism school, I had my first job, like all of that makes sense to what I'm doing now. But then as soon as I
It didn't.
stopped looking at it that way and let my world open up, suddenly these incredible opportunities and people showed up. So I had to do the work to be ready for them, but I was also open to everything. And so there's stuff now when I was younger, if someone brought something to me, I'd be like, well, I'm not ready for that, or I don't know anything about that. And now would I be, if you brought me something that I was like, huh, I didn't know that I was going to produce a movie, but actually I would love to do that. Yeah. Like, count me in. I want to figure this out. Like, I
I
can't say
love
yes
it.
enough. Yeah. Like, yeah, let me do something cool. So that's also, I think, a great, as you get older and you start reading all these tips to like keep your memory and keep your brain sharp. And I'm starting to be at that age to do that. But I'm telling you, what I would say is do different things and challenge yourself in different ways and never stay on
Always.
your line. It's just, that's not where the magic is.
That's what I call that the system. Everyone follows the same thing and just goes with that. I hate the system. That's why I'm living a different life. Even though it gets sad at times, I don't like the system. I like doing my own thing.
Did you learn that in baseball, or like is that
I,
inspired? Because that's completely system.
that's I learned that just on my own, just thinking about everything, deep thinking about everything. It doesn't make sense to me to everyone because you're taught to graduate college, get a job, and that's your life. I mean, why does that have to be your life? Why can't you get all these other things, make money, and then become that person?
Yeah, you guys have that more than we did. We didn't no other options. We just had
Well,
past.
that's why I stop and think because my family, I know that was my parents. That was that type of life. So yeah, but Laura, it was I know we could talk for hours. Seriously, like it's seriously. I knew this would be a great conversation. But here's my outro. We just went out on a limb. Now you continue to grow this tree by doing something different, or just be yourself. Peace. Thank you for coming on. Seriously.
Thank you for having me. That was so much fun.